Hey everybody, we're back to reading Smoldering Hunger. We're on chapter 2. I know you've been dying to find out what's going on with Dr. Sophie Martin and Darius, the Dragon King. But, alright, chapter 2. Chapter 2, on the other side of Edinburgh. The warehouse was quiet and empty except for the 4 dark fae at Darius's feet. He stared down at them, wondering where all the other dark were. We're going to count how many times she says dark in this chapter. It's 2. Those 4 were all he'd killed since he began hunting the morning before. It was a full 24 hours later, and all he had to show for it was 4 dark. He blew out his breath. Someone or something else was killing the dark. Not that he minded the help, but he wished he knew who it was. Blowing out a deep breath, Darius tried not to notice the stillness of the warehouse. Just a few weeks before, it was a place where he and Thorn had come while they'd fought the Dark Fae, who had attempted to take over the city and failed. Now Darius was back at Dregan with his mate Lexi, and Thorn was back in Dregan with his mate Lexi, and Darius was in Edinburgh alone. The repetition. It was such an insignificant word, or it had been for centuries. He'd sought out the solitude, had slept away centuries in his cave without hesitation. And now he hated the quiet. He detested being alone. It wasn't that he missed the other Dragon Kings. He could communicate with them via their mental link at any time. It was something much deeper, much stronger that twisted his gut. He told the other kings he wanted to end the war with the Dark Fae, so he could return to his mountain and the dragon sleep. It had been the truth for a bit. Now he found himself searching for something he didn't understand or know. No matter how many times he walked the streets of the city, no matter how many times he killed the evil Dark Fae, who sought to slaughter the innocent humans, Darius was never satisfied. It was as if he was missing something that only made him hunt longer and harder. He tracked the last remaining Dark Fae who hadn't been smart enough to leave the city, burning the bastards to ground. Since the Dark fed off the souls of the humans, Darius took great pleasure in killing them, but not even that helped to ease the tension within him. But it did help him remember that he was a lethal warrior. He did what he did not just for himself, but for his brethren at Dregan, who hid amongst the humans distilling world-famous whiskey. Because, that's what dragons should be doing. And he did it for the humans. The realm might have been the dragons first and foremost, but the humans were part of the world as well. The Dragon Kings fought for themselves and the mortals who once tried to kill them. Darius removed his shirt and folded it before neatly stacking it on the table on the other side of the warehouse. After removing his boots and setting them tightly together, he unfastened his jeans and stepped out of them. Folding them, he set the jeans beside his shirt and turned to face the dead fae. She could have just said he got undressed and put his clothes tidily to the side. With just a thought, he shifted his body, transforming from that of a human into a dragon. He shook his great head and blinked his eyes as he fastened them onto the dark. I think we're on 10. The greed and the extravagance of the dark had caused the city to erupt in chaos. Edinburgh hadn't been the only place bombarded with the dark. However, every major city in Scotland and England had been attacked. It caused the Dragon Kings to take drastic actions against the Fae. In doing so, the kings played right into the Dark's hands. The Dark Fae filmed the kings on Dregan flying, fighting and shifting. That video was then released onto the internet, and the furious storm of questions fell upon Dregan. Their leader, Constantine, King of Kings, ordered that no Dragon King could shift out of human form. Darius was doing what his brethren hadn't been able to do in weeks. He wasted no time in breathing fire upon the dark. I think we're at 15 now. There was nothing on any realm as hot as dragon fire, and it scorched the bodies into ash almost instantly. Darius immediately returned to human form and dressed. He wouldn't stay in his true appearance when the others couldn't. It wasn't fair. It only made him hate the Dark Fae even more. Once long ago, there was a war on Earth between the Fae and the Kings. The Fae wars had lasted for decades, with hundreds dying. The Kings eventually won. It was supposed to have been a war that would have never been repeated. It would have remained that way if the Kings hadn't had to hide their true selves. There was only one race to blame for that: humans. Darius dressed and left the warehouse. It was just after 5 in the morning. There was still time to do some hunting. Perhaps he'd get lucky and see who was killing the dark. He hadn't gone more than 5 blocks when he found himself turning to the left. Darius walked another 2 before he realized he was on his way to the Royal Victoria Hospital. His feet halted instantly. Not the rest of him, just his feet. Every time Sophie entered his thoughts, he hastily squished it. She was a distraction he didn't need and couldn't afford, yet when he walked the streets, every time he saw a flash of red hair, he hoped it was her. There was only one time in the 2 weeks since he'd made love to her on the street, shrouded by shadows with a hunger for her riding him hard, that he allowed himself to see her. A day after their encounter, he'd remained hidden atop a roof watching as she left the hospital. She hadn't even looked in the direction where they'd had sex against the building. Did she remember how her nails bit into his flesh? Did she recall how her body shuddered with the force of her climax? Did she forget how he had to swallow her screams of pleasure with a kiss? Look, dude. Sometimes the woman just doesn't want to look in that direction. Like, I don't know. How do you know she's not thinking about it? Are you kidding me right now? Jesus, the two of them fucking deserve each other. He had no trouble recollecting all of that and more, so much more. For days after, he had the taste of her on his tongue. Even now he recalled the feel of her soft, warm skin beneath his hands. He knew the weight of her breasts and how sensitive her nipples were. If he allowed himself, he could get drunk off her kisses alone. It was for that reason alone that he hadn't returned to the hospital, gone anywhere near Sophie's home. She was much too alluring and entirely too much of a temptation to put himself to close proximity with her. So why was he now heading toward the very place he'd shied away from? His thoughts had been on the dark, and eradicating them forever from his realm. He hadn't even been thinking of Sophie. Darius turned on his heel and retraced his steps. He had to get far from Sophie. Nothing good could come of him seeing her. For hours he walked without a trace of the dark, round 20, to be seen. It agitated him, but he knew there were still a few of the bastards in the city. The sun climbed in the sky and then began its descent, all the while he marched to the city from one end to the other. Jesus. A few times he thought he was being watched, but he could never discover who it was. Darius made his way to Edinburgh Castle. He was sitting and staring over the city when he felt the push against his mind. He instantly recognized Khan's voice in his head. He opened the link to Khan. Aye? How are things? Khan asked. If you're asking if I've discovered who's been killing the dark, I've not. Darius had hoped to have better news. The kings needed some good news soon. Holy crap, who edited this thing? Khan blew out a breath. It has to be the Fae. They're the only ones who can remain veiled. If it's Fae, then why not show themselves? It does not make sense. I never said it made sense, I just said it had to be them. So they're talking to each other, and I think it's supposed to be with the Scottish accent? Not gonna do the accent. Nope. Not even remotely close to doing the accent. Darius could hear the wariness in Khan's voice. He hadn't been to Jigen since before the video leaked. Darius could well imagine the tensions were running high, with everyone doing their best to appear as human as possible as MI5, who had descended upon their business and home. And you? Darius asked. How are you? There was a long pause before Khan said, We're fine. I didn't ask about you again. I know the bloody whiskey's going to be fine. I asked how you were, you stubborn bugger. How the fuck do you think I am? Darius smiled when he heard the anger in Khan's voice. Constantine was known for being as cold as ice in any situation. Few had seen him angry and lived to speak of it. I almost feel sorry for the dark for what we're going to do to them. They need to be wiped from this realm. All Fae need to go, even Rai. They've caused nothing but problems. Darius expected Khan to agree regarding the Light Fae who had helped them in many situations where the silence stretched on. Rai has too many friends among the kings, and you want Yuseli as an ally. The Light Fae Queen has nothing to do with this, Khan said tightly. His tone made Darius frown. Was there a tinge of irritation in Khan's tone over the Fae Queen? Interesting. There were rumors among the kings that Khan was disappearing a lot of late. Many suspected he and Yuseli were now lovers. That wasn't going to end well in any scenario. Darius changed subject. How was tracking going on with the dark? Not as well as before. Henry is making his mission to track the Fae. Henry, the only human who wasn't a mate of the kings, he'd been allowed to know their secret and enter their private domain. Henry was no mere human, however. He was one of the best spies Britain had to offer. Are the nasty buggers back in Ireland like they're supposed to be? Most. There's still some stragglers, far too many for my comfort. If they're in Edinburgh, I'll find them. Kansai was loud enough to make it through the mental link. You have to find Ulrich, Darius, and make him answer for this video. I'll not have any of you take to your caves to hide from mortals again. We survived it once, I'll not ask it a second time. We understand what's at stake. Ulrich knows we're all looking for him. We've been searching for weeks. Perhaps it's time we ask Brock. Nay, Khan said with finality. The warriors and the druids already brought attention to themselves during the battle with the Dark in Edinburgh. This is our fight. We can find Ulrich ourselves. He must stray far from Scotland, I'll wager. Just be on the lookout. Remember, Darius, he cannot be trusted. Khan severed the link before the last syllable was uttered. Darius looked over at the lights of the city and thought of Khan's word. Ever since Darius woke and ventured from his cave a few months earlier, he'd known his time would be spent in battle. Khan visited every king who'd slept and updated them on the world. Darius was well aware of Ulrich's growing threat before he walked from the mountain. Now he, like the other kings, was hunting one of their own. Ulrich was a menace to all the dragon kings. Ulrich might have brought Lily back from the dead for rice, but soon after he had attempted to kill Darcy. People we don't care about because we don't fucking know who they are. Ulrich's actions were chaotic and seemingly indiscriminate. Every time they thought they knew what he would do, Ulrich changed his motives. He surprised them with his decisions at every turn. It was a brilliant tactic to keep them guessing and on edge, not knowing what he would do next. No doubt it was driving Khan mad with fury. Darius grudgingly acknowledged Ulrich's cleverness. Then again, it was no surprise. Ulrich was one of the strongest of the Dragon Kings. He could have been King of Kings and probably could have been had Khan not wanted the position. Oh, so much fucking data dumping. The two of them had been close brothers. They were inseparable until Khan took over the King of Kings. Arlik never challenged it, even though it was Arlik's right to do so. Said Arlik stood behind Khan as their leader. Would have been different if Arlik had challenged Khan and won. Arlik may have been betrayed by his female lover, but he wouldn't have been exiled himself. He no doubt still have started the war with humans, but Arlik would have wiped the realm of them. Jesus, there's a lot of wiping of the realm going on here. That's one thing for certain. If Ulrich was the King of Kings, none of the Dragon King's problems would have been where they are now. They wouldn't be hiding from the humans, nor would they be in the war with the Fae. The Fae wouldn't be on the realm if it weren't for the mortals. Perhaps Ulrich had been right all along. It was better to end the humans' existence from the beginning. But that's not what happened. Khan was ruler, and Khan had put the end of Ulrich's war with the mortals. In order to keep the peace, the dragon were sent away, and every dragon king had hidden in their mountains on Drigan for several centuries until the humans forgot about them. The kings hid once, they wouldn't hide again. It was already too much for them to curb when they would fly. Before the disaster with the video, they were able to take to the skies at night or in thunderstorms, and they remained on Drigan when they did. Now they were all effectively grounded, since every mortal in the world was looking for a glimpse of them. Part of Darius wanted to show humans exactly who had been living beside them for thousands of years. He wanted all the kings to take to the skies and demonstrate their power once and for all. The realm had been theirs from the beginning. They willingly shared it with the mortals, but now the kings were shells of the great dragons they once were, and it saddened Darius to see how they had fallen so. He took a deep breath and pushed to his feet. He lowered his gaze to the streets around Edinburgh Castle. A frown puckered his brow when he thought he spotted a white-haired fae on the street below, but in the next instant it was nothing. Darius stared at the spot for a long time. The fae could evil themselves. However, none of the most powerful of them could remain hidden for more than a few seconds. He scanned the streets and surrounding buildings, but saw nothing. Was he so desperate to kill that he was beginning to see dark there when there was none? I don't know what number we're on. I think 25. The white-haired fae? There was no such thing as far as he knew. What, they can't dye their damn hair? The light fae had hair as black as the night and eyes as silver as moonlight reflecting off a lock. The dark fae had silver streaked throughout their black locks. The more silver, the more evil they'd done, and their eyes were red as blood. That's kind of arbitrary. Why the fuck does your hair turn silver if you do more evil? It was true a fae could cast a glamour that allowed them to change their appearance, but why would one intentionally bring attention to themselves with a white-haired one? Darius rubbed his eyes with his thumb and forefinger. He was tense, his thoughts troubled, and the need to take to the sky as they soared along the currents was strong. How he longed to shift and spread his wings, to roar long and loud into the night and announce to one and all that he was there. How he yearned to feel the flap of his wings as he flew and felt the sun and moon upon his scales to dip and dive, to turn and glide. He rubbed his chest, wondering at the ache that had settled there. His gaze lifted to the moon, half hidden by the thick clouds. There was hunger inside him, but it wasn't to be in dragon form. It was for the red-haired beauty who enchanted him with her fiery kisses and willing body. Before he knew it, he was walking away from the castle. Darius was so lost in thought he almost didn't see Ulrich before he turned the corner. Darius quickly altered his steps and followed Ulrich. The exiled dragon king walked alone. His steps were slow and hurried as he looked around the city, as if seeing what damage the dark had done. Ulrich wore thick-soled black boots that made a nary a sound, dark denim, and a dark red sweater. His black hair was pulled back in a queue at the base of his neck. A cold gust of wind howled through the street, causing the mortals to hunker within their coats. Ulrich lifted his face to the gust. Darius almost opened the mental link and called to Khan, but he hesitated. It would be better to know where Ulrich was going, and if he met with anyone first. If Darius notified Khan, the King of Kings would want Ulrich taken immediately. It was well known that Ulrich was working with the Dark Fae. If the kings could know their plans before it happened, then they would no longer be on the defensive. The kings would be one step ahead of the bastards and win the war before it spilled over into the human world any more than it already have. Darius smiled as his thoughts faded when And his thoughts faded when Oleg finally stopped walking and Darius found himself standing in front of the Royal Victoria Hospital. Dun dun dun. Okay, so that was entirely too much exposition. Way too much repeated crap. Like, she could have really cut that chapter down by, like, another page if someone had just bothered to edit it. But, Darius, I'll see you guys next time.